Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the Toasted Podcast. It's super fun to be here the week before holiday festivities begin. Today is, as we're recording anyway, the 21st. Margie sent me a text this morning alerting me to the fact that it is the solstice and that I have no idea what that actually means. I'm not going to pretend. I stopped listening when she was like, "Hey, guess what? Today's the solstice."
Oh,
Uh,
oh,
but
you are
I know I should.
insufferable.
Well, you're the first person who's ever told me that. Actually, it's surprising. Um,
It is
I
the
think my
winter
mother might
solstice.
have once. I think my mother might have once called me insufferable, and I was like, "Yeah, well, I don't know what that means." So,
Your
oh well.
mom and I are on the same page. It must be because we have the same first
Oh,
name.
that's yeah. I don't know. Let's be careful there. Jeez,
Oh.
that scares me.
So it
Did
is
you
the
ever
winter
notice that, like when?
solstice. Now I'm going to finish my
Yeah. Well, I
sentence. It
just
is
had.
the winter
Oh,
solstice,
you
and
do
is
that.
that it's the first day of winter. So happy official first day of winter, and also so the solstice is the longest night. Today is the longest darkness that we have, and starting tomorrow we get like a minute or so back of daylight up until the summer solstice. So which is the most daylight. So that is the winter solstice, and so as I've shared with you, but now that I know that you tune out when I talk, I'll just share again, is that the winter solstice is about the release. It's kind of like, think of it as like an astrological new year and reset, in the sense that this is the time when you release all the things you want to let go that no longer serve you, and think about the lessons of reflection. It's a wonderful time to do ritual. There's all different things people do, and sometimes what you can do is the things that you want to let go of, you can do a solstice burn. There's all sorts of things, and but yeah, so it is the solstice, which is it's a big deal. And so we get excited because we start to welcome back the sunlight, and that's in the winter time when especially in our 4-season climate, this is a time when everything appears dead on the surface, but underneath is life. And that's really symbolic of what the solstice is. And so you kind of keep that and generate that and prepare for the spring, the rebirth, and then, of course, the light of summer. So, yeah, happy winter solstice. And we want to welcome
Happy
our
winter
guest
solstice.
who's been stuck listening to us as we have this ridiculous intro. So huge, huge, huge toasted welcome to Steve Schouten. We are so, so, so happy you are here with us. He is a #1 fan from day one, huge supporter, and super wonderful human being. And I am so blessed to have him in my life as my friend. We met at Keuka College back in the day, and I'm sure we'll get into that at some point. So we are just so excited to have you here today. Welcome, Steve.
Well, thanks for having me. Thanks for having me. I listen religiously, so I'm happy to join in.
Well,
And
we're
he
sure
hasn't
happy
tuned
that you're
out
here.
yet, right? Like he could have bailed already.
Yes, he could have.
He spent the first like 15 minutes of our pre-planning where basically we just talk about the same stuff that we talk about on the air.
I was
Oh,
the
well.
one who actually got us on track to get on the air tonight, so I would like that on the record because that's a rare occurrence. I admit it.
Margie, I have to say one other thing that, to be honest, and I had said this to Steve because I got on, I sent
I'm
Steve the
waiting for it.
link.
I know
and
exactly what you're
then
going to say.
I was like, Margie's usually late. Just a heads up. It was it wasn't like a dig. It was just like just a heads up. It's
Right.
not unusual. But you were on today, so it must be the solstice.
It must be the solstice. Yes. No, I almost texted you guys and said, it's like I wasn't going to text you. I was going to just text Steve and say, just so you know, 8:00 really means about 8:10 in Margie time, just to let you know. But I knew Nick already knew that. So.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
But no, I was like, no, I'm going to, my aim is always to be punctual. I am the queen of, I can get one more thing done. Like, you know what? Let me just like quick do this. And it's never that. I'm always, behind. I don't know what it is. My mom was always super, super early. Like we were at things like too early, the kind where you're like the awkward people there when people are still putting the vacuum away,
Yep.
and you're just like, hi, So I don't know if I just have like this aversion from that or what, but it's just, I'm always that little bit, I don't know. I guess just like a good entrance.
Actually, I was going to say this earlier when we were talking, right before we started talking about the solstice stuff, or right when we were talking about that. So you had said that you and my mom were on the same page, and I realized that the fear, my mom, I'm afraid of my mom, not in like a
A healthy
not,
mom
but
fear?
like a in a healthy, healthy mom fear. Like, I mean, I'm a total mama's boy. Don't get me wrong, but I'm not like afraid of my dad at all, but very afraid of my mom because I think, and not that I don't respect my father either, just to be completely transparent, but like, I, like, I don't know. One time I told my mom I wasn't cleaning my room, and she scared me. And I was like, actually, I'm gonna go clean my room. My
I
bad.
remember
I don't know what I was thinking
overhearing.
there. Is it?
Oh,
Yeah,
you lost your mind just for a quick moment. Had to try it. I
yeah.
overheard my
No,
son
she let me
and
know.
she let you know, yeah. I overheard my son and his best friend, whose name is Nick. And they were talking, and my kids weren't allowed computer and games and things like that during the week, Monday through Thursday. Friday in the weekend they could, but not Monday through Thursday. So I overheard them in high school because I was teaching at the high school, and and he's like, "Dude, you got to get on to game." Da, da, da. And he's like, "No," I was like, "My mom. It's like we're not allowed to." And he goes, "Just do it anyway." He goes, "Just tell your mom you're going to do it." He goes, "You tell my mom I'm going to do it." And he's like, "I'm not telling that to your mom." And he's like, "Well, you don't think I am?" And it's just so funny. Yep. He's like, "No, not my mom."
Yeah. I felt like my mom had this like intensity that my dad's Italian, and he wasn't a yeller and was never like physical. Well, no, that's not true. He's a yeller. He's never physical or anything like that. But like, and half the time my friends would come over and be like, "Dude, why is your dad mad?" I was like, "He's not mad. He always talks like that. He's just loud." But my mom's very quiet and reserved until she's not, and then it's like, oh, okay.
Yeah,
I know
got
that.
it.
I know that tone of voice.
What about you,
So
Steve? Was your mom or dad who was the more?
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same camp as Nick.
yeah.
My dad was ridiculously reserved, to the point of if he raised his voice, you knew you were really in trouble.
Mm.
But yeah, everyone was scared of my mom. Sweetest lady in the world, but boy, you walk the line. So
Yeah.
so yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure.
That's
So
so funny.
I empathize with you, Nick.
I mean, I think it's been a good thing. I think in the
Oh yeah.
course of my life to actually, I don't know if I should say this on the air. This is well, whatever. It's already too late now. But a lady I work with, a wonderful professor, colleague, told me the other day that you should always be afraid of women. So I don't know if that's true or not, but she said it with a smile, and I think I've had a healthy fear um, instilled in me from my mother. So I don't know if that's good advice or bad advice, and I'm in no way
I think it's
advocating.
accurate advice.
Yeah,
Oh, that was
that's good.
that's funny.
Yeah, it turns out my teenage fear of girls has never really gone away. So
I think we're all just trying to figure it
all
out.
right,
So
yeah,
what are we all drinking tonight, folks? We were talking about that. That's when I cut us off and said, "Save this for the air. Let's talk about what we're drinking tonight."
yeah. Steve, what are
Yeah.
you drinking?
So I have Big Ditch right here from
Mm.
Buffalo, New York, right down in the middle of the city, and their signature beer is Hayburner IPA. So that's pretty much a staple in my fridge. So that's me tonight.
All
Very
right,
cool.
that's delicious. Love that one. Nick, what are you
Are
drinking?
you typically a IPA drinker, Steve?
If,
Or
if you heard, if my son were here to tell the story, he'd say his father is an IPA snob.
oh,
But I'm kind of across the board. I actually was with him Saturday night. We'd gone to a basketball game, and instead of driving all the way back to Buffalo, he insisted I stay and watch the football game with him. So we went to the Keuka College Standard Old Milwaukee, which
Ah,
when in Rome. So fun
old
night had,
swill.
but correct. The difference between Old Milwaukee and Hayburn are distinct. So
Yeah,
Yeah,
I haven't
that
had an Old Milwaukee in probably 15 years.
that's a good thing.
I wish I could say the same at this point, but
Oh,
not so
really?
much.
Yeah. Well, it's crazy because there's so many good beers around now,
There is.
and you don't, I mean, you almost have to. I don't know. It's hard. It's harder for me to pick out beer now than it is to pick out cereal, and I kind of take cereal seriously. So
And
Do you really?
you guys
yeah,
talk about Wegmans quite a bit on here, and
yeah,
Wegmans beer section is Nirvana.
yeah. It's really great.
Yeah, you can't go wrong there. So, and here in I live in Buffalo, and we have more than our share of breweries around here. So there's not a loss for a decent beer around here at all.
That's cool. Speaking of which, I'm drinking to get back to Margie because I'm going to be that guy to bring us back here because I'm never that guy. But I'm drinking the Sierra Nevada Hazy Little Thing IPA. It's a good one. I like it. It's I don't know. It's a nostalgic beer for me a little bit. It was a beer that one of my very good friends used to drink, and yeah. So I sometimes drink it as an homage to him. So, how about you, Margie? Are you drinking anything tonight? Or are you
I'm starting out with just a cup of herbal tea, fireside vanilla, which
okay?
I got my fire going tonight, so I was all proud of myself with that. But I am drinking my tea out of this new snazzy mug that I got from a certain guest on our podcast tonight who sent me a lovely gift basket full of great stuff. So I am terrible about getting my mail. I just don't because all my stuff's auto pay. So I just, whatever. And so every like week or two or so, I go to my mailbox because it's mostly junk. And today it was stuffed. I forgot I ordered some books and they came in the mail, not in my doorstep. But at my doorstep, when I got back from Christmas weekend in Syracuse, there were a couple boxes, and I just thought it was stuff I ordered from Amazon. I knew it was like no big deal, so I just pulled them in. So Steve's like, "Did you get my card?" I'm like, "I haven't got my mail. I'm sorry. I kind of suck." He's like, "It's kind of a package." I'm like, "What?" Like I'm such a terrible person. Here you're saying this like nice, lovely, and it's a great Buffalo gift basket full of coffee and goodies and this Buffalo mug and all that. And I'm like, I suck. So I'm drinking my tea out of my new mug. And then when we do cheers at the end, I am drinking Hornitos Black Barrel Tequila. So it is
Ooh.
yeah, and I love I'll be honest, this is the bottle that it originally came in was so cool. This one is all right, but it's not nearly as cool as the original one. So it's aged in charred oak. It is just so good. So it's an añejo tequila, which is you have your silver or your blanco, then your reposado, then your añejo. So it's aged the longest. So it already has a darker profile, and it's more like a bourbon as it is. So this one is aged in oak barrels, and so it just has just so good. So anyway, this is one of my wintertime favorites. So our Hornitos Black Barrel I'm drinking tonight, and I'm just drinking a wee little bit, so I have it in my shot glass that Rio donated to me one night when I was there. We'll just say it like that. So, that's how it is. So
Would you
yeah.
say that? Would you say that for a guy looking for a tequila to have on Christmas Eve while watching probably some silly Hallmark movie? Like, is that the one I want?
Oh, I think it's a delicious one. Yeah, this one or the Espolon that is añejo that's aged in the bourbon barrels. That's really good too.
Yeah.
But this one I get, I mean, in Canandaigua, Ryan's always has both of them. I love the Hornitos Black Barrel, and I just drink it neat. And I will tell you that that is really, really good in eggnog. So just to let you know, I discovered that last year. I got some eggnog, and I was like, yeah, I do the almond milk eggnog, and but I had that in the Hornitos. Ooh, yummy! It was very good. So I would highly recommend that for I don't know Spanish huevo snog. I don't know what you call it. It's just very good. You can call it that, I guess. So We're a little
Yeah, I
silly
don't know if
here.
Nog. I wonder if Nog has a translation or not,
I
or if it's just a
don't really know.
cognate.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So shall we get to it? Should we get to it?
Oh yeah, we probably should, and not just talk
Probably should
about
get to it.
booze all night.
I know, right? Could be a fun thing here.
Yeah, for
So,
sure.
when the first episode aired of the podcast, and so Steve, please jump in.
Sure.
I received a Facebook message from Steve, like just saying, "Wow, Margie, that's really something. You hit on something, universal." And I'll let you explain because you're the one that
Sure.
reached out to me, and I was just like, "Oh my gosh!" And we entered into this
Sure.
conversation that led to this.
Sure.
Speak.
So the conversation started due to the fact that the the nature of the podcast was all about failure. So I reached out to Margie and said how important the topic is, and the way that the two of you approach it is fantastic because it talks about failure from the standpoint of how people react to it and how you rise above it. So
Mhm.
when I reached out to Margie, I said, there's an aspect of failure that I think people may or may not take to, and it's perceived failure. So I'll kind of get into it a little bit. So as Margie said, she and I went to school together. One of Margie's best friends is my wife, Jennifer. She met Jennifer at school. Jennifer and I are the same age. Margie is a year behind us in school. Both RAs, both tasked with keeping guys like me out of trouble in school. So
Let's just stop. What an RA is, a resident assistant.
correct.
So we were
Right.
RAs, a resident assistant,
Correct.
and that means we're the people in college that is in charge of making sure the parties don't get out of control, that rules are followed, all those kinds of things. So like Jen and I were the type of RAs where we would be like, oh my gosh, you go over and like knock on the door cracks open like an inch, and you see somebody's like eyeball, that's already glassy, and you're like, so I'm gonna come back in 10 minutes.
Right.
And in 10 minutes, I'm going to knock again, and I need the door to open all the way. I'm going to go to the third floor and do rounds. In other words, get the people out of the damn building, and then I'll come down in 10 minutes, So we were that kind of an RA.
Right. So, and luckily, Margie and Jennifer were both on my side, so I got fair warning in those instances. So, fast forward, and Jennifer and I date in college. We get married. We're married for 22 and a half years. When we were engaged, Jennifer contracted a blood disorder that caused, among other things, kidney failure. So she suffered with kidney failure for 22 and a half years, unfortunately passed in March of 2017. So, the last 5.5 years, as you'd expect, have been a struggle. But one of the aspects of it is perceived failure. And what I said to Margie was that, I struggle with the fact of what could I have done different that would not have caused the circumstance to happen. Now, as you can probably imagine, I'm not doing rounds in a hospital, so I'm not a doctor. I mean, from a practicality standpoint, there's nothing I could have done differently that would have, stopped the inevitable. But that doesn't stop someone from, thinking to themselves, you really failed and it caused what happened. And trying to get your hands around that at times is extremely difficult. So that's an aspect of failure where it dwells in people, where it's undeserved, but it doesn't stop it from happening. So that was just an aspect where I said, that's something that's, probably isn't addressed as much as it should be.
No, and I think that when there's grief, you go back through so many different things.
Right.
and there are so many emotions mixed together.
Right.
So when you said the word perceived,
Right.
how did you choose that to be the word? I like that, the perceived failure.
Because perceived is well, there's outward perception and there's inward perception. So
Mm-hmm.
the way I was looking at things, and having been part and parcel along this journey with Jennifer, from the time she was diagnosed and through
Right.
everything that happened over those years, um, you gain your own perspective. What anybody outward sees is different than what the two of us saw through this whole thing. So inward perception is where I say, okay, go retrace your steps and think of what you could have done differently that would have, changed what happened. And people on the outside, and rightly so, would say, Steve, there's nothing you could have done that would have stopped what happened. This is all physical. She had a debilitating illness that was terminal. It simply was. But of course, as folks that deal with people with cancer, I had a good friend a few years ago that passed due to ALS. In these situations, there's nothing you can do, but it doesn't stop you or anyone who's touched by it to go, Christ, there had to be something I could have done differently that would have changed this course.
Mm-hmm.
And that leads itself to a sense of failure that's, it's false by every stretch of the imagination, but it doesn't stop someone from saying, damn it, there's something I could have done differently. So
Something I could have done,
yeah,
something I could have thought of, a doctor I
yep,
could have called, a
yep,
medicine we could have tried, a
yep.
decision differently,
Sure,
not taken this trip or not stressed out in this way.
sure,
I mean, there are
yeah.
so many things.
Mm-hmm.
And now, so for people, so Jen actually, when you said she had the blood disorder, that
Yeah.
was before you guys were married.
Correct. So,
And I remember when we were, yeah, go ahead.
oh no, go ahead, Margie. Go.
Oh, I just say we were all on pins and needles because it was like, what is happening? We knew the wedding, and then we were like, oh my gosh. And then Jen actually, from my recollection, tried to call the wedding off. As far as
Actually,
wanting.
it's the absolute opposite.
Oh,
Jennifer,
okay. All these years I've had it wrong.
No, so Jennifer, so we were engaged in November of '93.
Mm-hmm.
Her blood disorder was actually a result of the E. coli bacteria, which led to a disease called hemolytic uremic syndrome, which is a blood disorder. And one day in February of 1994, she went into seizure and almost passed then. They were able to save all of her organs with the exception of her kidneys. So she went immediately into kidney failure, which meant immediately into dialysis. And that was the point where her discussion with me was, you didn't sign on for this.
Because the what?
She goes, you
Right,
didn't.
because the wedding was that following October.
Correct. So I think what you're thinking, Margie, is the fact that she was like, listen, you didn't sign on for this. This is the rest of my life. To which I said, no, this is the rest of our lives, and we'll get through this, and this is fine. So it was at that point that she had said, okay, if we're going through this, we're getting married in October, just like we planned we were. And I said, well, of course we are, because you do what you do. Nobody's going to tell. Margie will tell. My wife was 5'2", and you talk about being scared of somebody in our earlier conversation. Yeah, try telling her she's not doing something. So we went full steam ahead to an October wedding, and through dialysis. I mean, we spent our honeymoon. I mean, our honeymoon was dialysis. She went for hemodialysis 2 days after our wedding, and we went to Niagara on the Lake because we could drive back to Buffalo so she could do dialysis. So, yeah, but that.
Yep, that's what I recall, is that when she had said you didn't sign on for this, and you're like, if we took our vows, it was through sickness and in health.
Right.
So what? Yeah.
Right.
And we were all just like, oh my
The you
gosh.
became we in Cuca Park. So there wasn't a,
Mm-hmm.
nobody's abandoning this ship. Which again, so if you come full circle and you're not abandoning that ship, 30 years
Yep.
ago,
Right.
trying to get your head around it does lead to that. Okay, where the hell did I fail? What the hell happened?
Mm-hmm.
And again, it's fool's gold. It's you're not necessarily looking. There's not a magic formula out there for something like that, but it's what you do.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you both during these podcasts have talked about rising above it, and it's what do you do to work within that for and a lot of it comes with experience. So you get to Margie and I have talked about the fact that Christmases are difficult, that any holiday, her birthday, all these things are difficult. So with experience comes how you handle that. So the rising above the failure is realizing how you're going to react, how you're going to feel, knowing that in advance. And then what are you doing to honor her legacy? What do you do? You don't slow down. You put your foot to the pedal and you just move forward. And now, is it easy? No, but that's nothing that the two of us ever did was. So that's what you do. So if there's a rising above that, that's probably what it is.
Well, and you were sharing with me too that where she had her dialysis, often there was the wall of windows where she could see
Right.
your son,
Right.
your and Jen's son
That's
Ryan,
right.
with so I'll let you share about
That's right.
that.
Sure. So one of the fortunate aspects was that her dialysis clinic was, well, let me go to the most fortunate aspect of this was getting a kidney transplant. So in 2008, no, I'm sorry, 1998, Jennifer got the gift of life, transplant. So fast forward to 99 when one of my tasks was going to famous Wegmans to go pick up all of her scripts, and on the counter she left a script, and I just grabbed a handful and went, and she said, "You better look at the one script." And I said, "Okay." So I looked at it, and it was from her doctor who had become a friend at this point, and he wrote, "You guys can have a child." So I looked at it, and I'm like, "This can't be real." She said, "No, we're clear to have a baby." And as I said, she's not taking no for an answer. So
She's not.
along comes Ryan, and the miracle. It was meant to
Absolutely.
be. So fast forward again, where her kidney transplant fails, and she's back to dialysis. The dialysis clinic is right next to my son's high school, so she has the ability to look out the window and watch him play, walk across a very short field to come over and watch. He's right there. So that was something that was, that was a blessing. It's a mile down the street from where I'm sitting right now. So, I think another thing when you're dealing with kind of and I won't say myself, what the three of us dealt with is you kind of got to look for, look for those wins, because they're out there. You just have to find them.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's parallel with where you're trying to rise above a failure or rise above some set of circumstances that is less than ideal.
Yeah. And
So how did you talked a little bit about that, like finding those things? Is that something that you were conscious of at the time, or is that something that, like, in retrospect, you
Yeah,
kind of do that?
I would say it's more retrospect. It's difficult to find it at the time because everything seems to be a bit of a trial by fire. I'm fortunate that I was married to who I was married to, because she would consistently look for the good. and that was always her. There's something good in all of this. And one of the things
Mm-hmm.
that I can tell you that is, and Margie will attest to this. This is prototypical Jennifer. Is that even with everything that she went through, the dialysis center that she went to would call her on her off days and ask her to come back to the clinic and talk to people that are having or struggling with dialysis and the personal side of it, so she could coach them or tell them this isn't a death sentence. This that you can live by doing dialysis. You can still thrive and survive doing dialysis. So she became a cheerleader while she was doing that, and the clinic saw the way she handled her issues and kind of used her. So, and she was happily did it. So for someone, as we went through it, and as the person on the other side of it, it would be really difficult to get demotivated when you watch someone who is taking on what she's taking on and still has a extremely sunny disposition in spite of it all. So that made this whole journey that we went on more palatable than it was.
Yeah.
Oh, Jennifer definitely had the can
Yeah.
do, and as you shared, like through
Yeah.
all of this, she was active in
Yeah.
PTA and all the different aspects with
Right.
Ryan and working and
And
all of
work.
that. And
Yeah.
you've said it was unique.
Yeah.
Yep, and unique
For sure.
circumstances. You and Jen had a unique life
Yeah.
because it was always from the time, since before we were married, and I remember at the wedding reception even hearing about how you had to plan and call ahead to the hospitals and plan the
That's right.
dialysis and any trips you did to make sure there was that and nearby. And so that became the way of life. That
That's
became
right.
unique circumstances for the two of you, and then certainly for your
Mhm.
son. And that was something that we had
Right.
talked about, that's Ryan's
Right. So
experience.
he never knew his mother healthy, which
Mm-hmm.
I think, and he'd kill me if I said this, but I think it's made him more resilient. Things that would trip up other kids just didn't for him. And where he's lugging dialysis bags up a set of stairs, or he and I are staying overnight in a waiting room, like that was second nature to him. He didn't complain, he didn't bitch.
Mm-hmm.
There was things we had to miss, and he was never a complaint. I also was fortunate, and still am, to have a fantastic network of people here in Buffalo and friends of mine from school and all over the place who um, helped me with the lift with him at times, and would come and stay or have him over for a weekend, or I had a family here in Buffalo that took him on a Disney cruise with them, just knowing hey, this is an opportunity for him to have a great time and for you guys to kind of level set a little bit. So as
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
we've been extremely fortunate. So yeah.
And that's something I think we've talked, we were at least trying to communicate, with the whole process of that
Right.
rising through, in order to get above that rising through, it has to be that, realizing that where you are is difficult. Like, this is
Yeah.
hard. This is
Yep.
really hard. And having that network, having the people, having the community, and sometimes that reaching out is really hard. Sometimes when someone reaches out to you and offers, that's really
Yeah.
hard. And that can feel like a
Yes.
failure.
Yeah. You're
Like, I
100%.
can't provide for my
100%. And
kid.
and
Yeah,
for someone, and you know Margie knows, I've known Margie 30 years too, so she knows I'm a pretty strong-willed person, and for me to accept help is a little difficult. But fortunately for me, I have friends like Margie and friends around here that they insist. There's no, you're not getting around that.
we're
Yeah,
all a stubborn
there's
bunch.
yeah.
We're all a pretty
Yeah,
stubborn bunch.
Steve, move out of the way. This is how it's going to happen. So, when you have friends like that, it made a ridiculously difficult situation that much, that much. I won't say easier, but they helped a great deal. They helped a great deal. So,
Mm-hmm.
and still do. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you
Yeah.
never escape it. You just learn to live with it. So yeah, and it's in a day where everybody and their brother gets tattoos. Mine's not visible.
Mm.
It's left a mark
Mm.
that. And Ryan and I both have
Mm-hmm.
tattoos of Jennifer's initials, but ours are, we kind of know where we stand. And like I was saying about him, his resilience will carry him because of what he's been through. He's a true testament of, um, as to the three of us all went through. So
So talk to us if there was a family who is now suddenly facing
yeah,
something like this, where it just knocks the wind out of your sails, it changes how life is. Because my guess is that had to have been times when either Jen was low and you were high, or she was high and you were low, or Ryan, whatever. How would you say we would help each other we would lift each other up through these circumstances that, like you said, weren't going to magically ever just suddenly
right.
be better? So how would you say to somebody else?
That's a fantastic question, and I can only really speak to our situation only because in a lot of cases
Mm-hmm.
it differs. As much as what happened with her happened suddenly, we as a family grew up with what happened. So for us, you know,
Mm-hmm.
one, two, three of us being up or down was just part of the equation, and we never too high, never too low. We just knew what
Mm-hmm.
we were faced with, and we knew how to coach each other up, or coach, or do whatever we needed just to kind of get through the next day. And um, it forces, you could never plan too far in advance. We don't.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of my struggles in where I am today, where I have a lot of folks that are around my age that are getting ready for retirement and saying, I have this plan and this plan and this plan and this plan. And they say, Steve, what's your plan? And I say, I grew up for 25, 30 years where I really wasn't allowed to have a plan. I had to work within the confines of
Mm-hmm.
everything that was going on. So to say, I'm going to retire to the Carolinas, or I'm going to do this in 5 years, or I'm going to do that in 10, that wasn't part of the equation. It was, how are we going to get through the
Mm-hmm.
next month, or what surgeries are coming up, or is there a chance of another transplant, or anything like that. So I guess to get back to your original, I get off on these tangents. I apologize. But to get back to
That's what the podcast is. That's the subtitle of the
Yeah,
podcast.
don't apologize.
Toasted to podcast, off on
to get
tangents.
back to your original question, yeah, I think in our case, the three of us, and one of us, right out of the womb, but the three of us kind of grew up with this. This is what it is, and we just face up. You just you put your best foot forward, and do anything and everything we could to try to make the situation better.
Steve, I'm going to make a slightly unfair
Sure.
comparison to my own situation, which is nowhere near as tricky, but I want to use it to illustrate and then ask a question. So my son has food allergies, like
Sure.
anaphylactic shock sort of food allergies. So he's allergic to milk, anything from a cow, really. And so growing up, you know, we would go to my parents' house, and it was a combination, I think, of fear and pity. But they would always say things like, "Oh, I feel so bad for he can't have this, and I feel so bad that he can never have this," or "Oh, I didn't, or they would like coddle him. And I remember, like, this is a hard conversation to have with my mother. Was like, who is wonderful about this, just to be clear. But I was like, you can't do that because
Right.
this is his life, right? You can't. It's he's not. This is
Right.
just what he has to live with, and so we can't treat it like it's something to pity or something to
That's right.
It's just what it is. And so if he shows up here and you don't have a snack for him, don't say you're sorry. Just say like, "Geez, I
Right.
didn't grab
Right.
anything." You know what I mean? It was like, so one of the things I wonder about is like, you guys. Sure, you guys were a really tight knit group. But was there ever times when it was
Absolutely.
hard for the people
Absolutely.
around
And
you?
ironically, I was going to come back to, um, the first few times we were around my parents. It was a little difficult. Just acclimating to the fact that for quite a few reasons. Trying to set up a house. My parents had a house that was 100 years old, so it wasn't but ADA accessible. So trying to set up IV poles and these types of things in the right spots. Now they did a fantastic job as years went on, and Jennifer and I traveled with them to Key West and had a really nice vacation, but we had to learn how to live with it. And a perfect example of this would be my wife. She became a NASCAR fan. She kind of growing up with a guy who grew up in Watkins Glen. You really didn't have a choice but to kind of acclimate yourself to auto racing. So she would
Okay.
religiously come to the races with all of us who grew up on this racetrack. And it was my father that would really look after Jennifer. And if he sensed that she was a little tired, we're done. We're going home or we're taking a break or this and that.
Hmm.
So my father and Jen
That's great.
became ridiculously tight. And he really took Jennifer's passing extreme. Not that anyone took it very well, but he really took it difficult because he looked at this as you know kind of a new thing for him. It was around the time he'd retired, so he had to learn what having a daughter or having a girl in the house was like, because he had two sons. So he really took to the fact he had this daughter that he could kind of protect, and instead of dealing with his two stupid sons. And then as he learned how this kidney failure and how it was kind of beating up her body was affecting her, he made it a point to, if anything was going sideways, he was the protector. So it can work both ways, and to your point about what you're saying with your son, it makes 100% sense, because as time went on, everybody tried to make things just regular. Nothing, sure, there's an IV pole sitting
Yeah.
here. Sure, you had to wait a little longer. Sure, you had to do this. But over time, it just becomes natural. So,
Yeah.
So then
Wow.
talk to us.
yeah.
We talked about Christmas. And I know when Steve and I had finally, after all this time,
Yeah.
saw each other for the
25
first time in
years. Yeah.
25 years in person. It took us, we were like, 25 years. We were like, when was the last time we actually
Right.
were in person? Because now Steve and I actually don't live
Right.
too far away from each other now that I'm here in Fredonia. And it was like, wait a second, we're like right
Exactly.
here. What are we
Exactly.
like? What's wrong
Yeah.
with us? And And so we were trying to figure out, we're like, when is the last time? And we were like, oh my gosh, it was 25 years ago and all of that. And so, of course, as we were catching up over a lifetime of things to catch up on, we got talking about the holidays and really talking about how, you know, you can't go back. You can't make something that isn't there anymore. And so just talk to us about how you and Ryan together really, reimagined Christmas. And I was talking about Thanks Christmas, that I celebrated with my son and daughter-in-law and my daughter's boyfriend this past weekend, which we had to shift and change and adapt and all of that because of weather storms and this, that, the other. But when we were talking about how in different stages of life, and I was sharing about how, what Nick and I have shared before, how divorce changes everything. Okay, we're going to change how we do this. We can't make it what it was before. We're not an intact family anymore. My house, I hosted everything. My sister hosted Christmas Eve, but I hosted everything else: Thanksgiving, Christmas Day, Mother's Day, Easter, and I loved it, and I had an actual house to do it in. And but it changes everything. And so, and then, with my son getting married, he and my daughter-in-law go down to New York City with her family. And I got a props. They've invited me both to Thanksgiving and Christmas to go to the city with them. And that's very kind of them and their, my daughter-in-law's family to include me like that. But it just changes, when you were the house that hosted, when you were the mom that loved to make the magic and, and do all those things just sometimes naturally with kiddos aging up and moving away. And sometimes it's because of a divorce or a death or whatever. It just shifts and changes. And so you and I were talking about that because Jen loved to make the magic too. I mean, that was definitely one of her superpowers in life.
Absolutely. So, so she passed in March of 2017. So the first few years were pretty difficult. Plus, you add into that my son's birthday is the day after Christmas. So Christmas to us, and valiantly, we would put up a tree and I'd decorate. The first couple of years. Now, he's still in high school, and he's an athlete, so he was playing basketball at that point. So, everything kind of had to stay central to here. And then fast forward, he goes off to college, still trying to do the same thing. But his first semester back home in 2019, my mom passed on his birthday. So we have another Christmas where, oh my gosh, now this has happened. So you get past the COVID year. So we were having a conversation. I believe we were coming back from my father's house visiting him, and we just get in this conversation, and it was, Christmas for us sucks. It just does. Everything that's happened, it just sucks.
Yeah.
So he talked about, what could we do to kind of shake the snow globe up? We both love to golf, and we both are not big fans of the weather here in Buffalo in December. So we decided to go away and have our own little Christmas just golfing. So last year was our first year. We went to Scottsdale and played golf, and were able to celebrate his 21st birthday and play a course that neither of us thought we'd ever play in our life, TPC Scottsdale. And we had a wonderful time last year, to the point where, we're going away 2 days from now to Tampa to now, granted, the weather's going to be 40 degrees colder, but we're still going to golf. And that's become our thing, where Christmas, as we move forward, or at least until he's got a family of his own, is going to be, what can we do to kind of not only redo Christmas, but kind of escape a little bit. Because remember, we both live with this pseudo burden over our head. We both, he's a student. Yep. I have my job. We, bury, and one of the elixirs for me in my wife's passing was I buried myself in my work. And have done it when my mom passed, when my father passed. I just, right or wrong, I went right back to work. So this little escape for both of us is, as we found last year, is just so needed, so necessary. And it's, that, as Margie talked about, this reinvention of what Christmas is to us. And it's, not only the opportunity to be together, but I'm sure as I sit here, Jennifer's looking down going, I'm glad you boys are doing this. This is what you two need. You need to get the hell out of Dodge for a couple of days, be together, laugh, joke, probably tell jokes at her expense. Just be and kind of get away from it. So we're in more ways than one, as you could probably imagine, we're fortunate to have each other. So yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I really like, thinking
Sure.
about two things that you said at different points in this discussion. Earlier you talked about that perceived failure, and I think it's really cool to kind of listen to you talk about how you've I don't know if overcome is probably not the right word, but found ways of rising through it. Yeah. And so I want to use that analogy of the second arrow, and we've talked about this a couple times, but I think it's just such an apt way of thinking about it. So like, that classic example where like the first arrow is the arrow that hits you physically.
That's right.
The second arrow is the one that you keep remembering, or right? Like you keep inflicting that one. That's the one you can control. And it's so interesting to hear you talk about that perceived failure, and that really is a second arrow. And like you can keep doing that if you want, but at some point you have to find ways of like escaping, which I know this is probably like, so there's probably some therapist out there who's like, no, you shouldn't escape, but the reality is like that the practicality of it is that like you do kind of have to get
and I don't necessarily know if
enjoy yourself.
Through in a situation like this is the apt word. Rising to meet whatever that becomes, I think is more, because through makes you think that you've totally gotten past it, and you never will. But you can rise to a point where,
that's true.
Okay, this is how you react to certain things. This is what you do to, coexist with everything else that's going on. And it's finding that path. And I think as long as I'm still on the earth, I'll still be searching for that. I don't know that you're ever, and I don't think that's really different for anybody who's had loss or not. They may have you're constantly searching for, what that means. And, I have highs and lows. I go back often, usually at, birthdays, the day she passed, I take that day off of work. It's just a day to reflect and think. And, as the years have gone on, I think I do a better job at not letting myself go into that pit of failure. I think I just say, okay, today's just a day to remember her. I'll open scrapbooks. My wife was a ridiculous scrapbooker. Ridiculous. I've got pictures of Margie that would maybe you can post.
Oh
maybe
my
you can
gosh!
Oh,
they're all good, Margie. They're all good.
You two are becoming.
Steve.
This is
Steve,
like too
talk,
bro
buddy.
good for me right here. No. This is Margie had like her natural curly hair,
they're all
big
good.
and
I would
everything.
not. They're all good.
No, they're not good.
But yeah, I spend that
I
time,
promise.
just kind of swimming in the memories of Jen. And I won't say it's always difficult, but like I said, as the years go on, you know what to expect. And I'll be honest, I'm gonna sound like one of the things that you guys did that really had an impact on me, and Margie and I talked about it a little bit, was when you talked about the impact that music plays in how you cope with things or how you react to things,
Oh, that's
right?
right. You were going to share
So
about that. I
so
forgot. You said you were going to talk
so
about that. Yes.
I really I go to a ton of concerts anyway, but I really jumped into music as an elixir to help me right when she passed, and I still do it to this day. I get deep into the lyrics. I try to, take a lyric and
Mm-hmm.
parallel it against something that's happened, or look at a lyric and I'll use, and 9 times out of 10 I'm using Jennifer as an example and saying, wow, this really speaks to an element of her, or this is something that rings true that she liked, or so like it doesn't matter who the performer. I'm a big Springsteen guy, and Springsteen, is just one of the best songwriters ever. Tom Petty's another one. Pearl Jam's another one. A Canadian band I love, the Tragically Hip, they're another one. Where
Oh
I'll
yeah.
dig deep into the lyrics, and right here in my breezeway, I have right on the wall, it says "No dress rehearsal. This is our life," which is from their song "Ahead by a Century." And if you think about it, that's the way we lived. When everything happened, it's not a dress rehearsal. You jump right in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, the when you guys had the episode about
Mm-hmm.
music, and I actually made a playlist of each of your songs to listen to them, so I could, yeah, so I could listen
Oh
to the
my gosh,
lyrics, and
really?
because I think that's, and I won't say it's individual to me because of what happens. 'Cause I think a lot of people do this, but I try to find inspiration in the lyrics and say, as opposed to, sure, I've got days where it's just
Mm-hmm.
headbanging music driving out to work every day, but other days I'll just, go into the lyrics and go,
Yeah.
this is what they're trying to say, or you always try to assimilate that to what you're thinking. So yeah, that episode, along with a lot of your other ones, really spoke to me. So kudos to you guys and to what you're doing, because
Well,
to, yeah,
well,
because
thank you for
it
that.
really does ring true.
Now I thought you
Oh
said you were
yeah,
going to
yeah,
share a
yeah, yeah.
Dylan
You're
song that
right.
was
Thanks for
important to you.
reminding
I
me.
thought you said that.
The
Okay.
one Dylan song that I have that I listen to quite frequently is "Shelter from the Storm," which really talks about,
Oh
how you are kind of, it is what it is. It's shelter from the storm. You're trying to find a way to get through to the other side of, whatever's in your way. Um, and yeah, it's yeah. Music just does it plays a vital role in the, I'll say, the healing process, but it's the life process. It just is it,
Mm-hmm.
and as silly as this may
I
sound,
would
I'll
agree.
listen to a lyric and I'll have a full out conversation with Jennifer about, hey, listen to this, and, you know, hear this out. Pearl Jam has a song, Release Me. And it's basically,
Mm.
they tell a really good story in one of their concert movies about a gentleman who was the first in line at Wrigley Field to go see them play, and all about how that song, when his father passed, helped him get through to the other side. So, a music goof like me hears something like that,
mm,
I dive in full body. So, yeah,
wow.
Oh, definitely. I think music is um
right,
it's
right,
just so universal. It's just it is, the arts in general to me are the great equalizer. You don't have to speak the same language. You don't have to have the same culture, upbringing, socioeconomic status, nothing. Like you could be in an art gallery and have five people standing around a painting looking at it, and it holds meaning, or you might see something or whatever, and none of those, you don't even need to speak to one another to
right,
have a knowing look with each other. And the same thing with music. You can have the music on and you don't even have to. There's an Icelandic artist named Kaleo that I really, really like. And one of most of his songs are in English, but one of them is in his native language. And I have no clue what the words mean, but it is so beautiful and so just has this hollow, haunting quality to it. And it helps me to, like, when I hear that, it speaks to that piece of me that
Right.
is hard to put words to. And I appreciate that it isn't English words, because you can just get lost in the feeling of it, and I think sometimes that we are in our head so much that being able to music helps us get into that feeling part, and our brain can take a break, and we can just be, we can just exist, we can just, whether sometimes it is to lift us, to motivate us, and sometimes it's just, I'm sad and I
Right.
need to be held in a sad space, that feels sad too. And I think that that's, when you talked about the reflecting and the birthdays and all those things, and especially going through the scrapbooks, I mean,
Right.
you're reliving a lifetime. That's a
Right.
lifetime, and a loss is a loss. I mean, when people talk about that, it,
Right.
when that part is gone,
Right.
it's gone. You're always going to miss it. I don't feel like
Yeah,
there's,
you
when
don't.
people say get over it or heal
You
through it,
don't.
it's a loss. There's
That's right.
something missing in me forever. And, yeah. And I think that there's, that has to be honored, and even the through process or the rising process includes, I'm a being
That's
with
right.
this chunk out of me, and that's okay, because I'm
Well,
so grateful I had this chunk to begin with,
you speak to something that I have said since she passed, is that, and I think as much as music and as much as my son and as much as friends and everybody has helped me, help drag me through these last almost 6 years, one thing that I, I consistently go back to is that there are folks that weren't that have never been fortunate enough to spend the amount of time I did with the person I did and learn as much as I did. There's folks that never happens to. They never
Mhm.
get a chance to
Yeah.
meet their soulmate. They never get a chance to have a child. They never get a chance to. And
Mhm.
and this might sound foolish, but I don't think it does. They don't get a chance to try to really fight a battle and be there for that person and go down that road with them. Yeah, was the end result not what it was supposed to be? Sure, but
Mhm.
you, Jennifer's mantra was always, you gotta find the reason why. You gotta find the good in
Mhm.
something. If you don't, you're just gonna wallow, and go down a really bad path. And so, fortunately for me, I was with someone that not only was I blessed with her bravery, but what she taught me and taught Ryan on this path is something we'll have forever. It's just the
What
sense of,
Jennifer taught every person that's
yeah,
ever had the blessing
yeah,
of knowing her. What
yeah,
Jennifer
yeah.
taught all of us.
That's correct. It's
Although I
just,
never called her Jennifer. So what
Well,
Jen
yeah,
taught us.
I hate to.
yeah, neither did I.
I mean, I don't even know Jennifer, and she's teaching me right
Yeah,
now.
it was,
So
She's
yeah,
amazing. That's Jen. That's
yes, it
Jen.
is.
That's
It
There
is.
she is. That's
It
her.
is. It is, and it's this legacy, and Margie's one of them, that of this friend group that you just, they're all cut of the same cloth. I think back to all you
Oh
girls.
gosh.
I think back to
Please.
all you girls that were our age, Margie and yourself and Kim and
Mhm.
Jennifer. You're all cut. You're all cut of the same. You all went through that period of time where you were all together and you're all at Cuca and you all were RAs and you all had to put up with assholes like me, and you just you, and all my buddies. But
The fellas.
yeah, yeah, and you just,
Shout out.
and yeah, so yeah, her influence and her legacy, yeah, it shines itself in a myriad of ways.
Yep. Sure
Yeah,
does.
and I think something else that you said, maybe just to kind of put a
yeah,
point on this whole conversation that struck me as maybe the most outsider in this conversation. But one of the things that like I'm taking away from this conversation, especially this time of year, I think is, that whole concept of expectations or planning and imagining these things being in this perfect way. And sometimes that itself, I think, becomes that second arrow, right? Like you work so hard. You could have spent your whole life planning for this
Right.
retirement, and you'd have missed everything
Exactly.
else, right? And then I don't know. I think that expectation, a lot of times that, and I caught myself actually, so somewhat autobiographically doing this yesterday because I was a little grumpy yesterday. Or was it the day before, Margie? I guess it was the day before. Monday.
The day before.
I was just feeling like I should have done this and I should have done that and I should have, I was like, this is so dumb. I'm spending all my time today thinking about all the things I should have done. And none of those things are helping me right now. And none of those things were, they just weren't, it just wasn't part of my existence. And there's no point in dwelling on them. And I think in this time of year, it's real easy to fall into that trap, and I think as 2023 rolls into town here, I'm really trying to be conscious of like, this is where we're at, and this is how do we live here,
right?
And that's really
one of those things that I think becomes extremely important and was important to us was that flexibility. You just, you talked about setting that goal and setting that plan and, the perfection end of it, but you have to, at some point, have the flexibility to shuck and jive and be able to move in this direction when you're going. My father always used to say, when everybody's turning right, turn left. And he wasn't wrong. So if you have, and I'm not saying you do that all the time, but if you have the flexibility to do that and can see where that benefits you, or, that's a different route that, it's an adventure. Margie and I have been talking about adventures since we had, what we thought would be an hour dinner that lasted 5 hours in Fredonia. That, if you're having that, flexibility to be adventurous is what life's all about.
Yeah.
Yep. So we're trying to figure out what our next adventure is.
Our next one for sure.
Because life's meant to be lived.
Like really, one easy adventure would be for you to come back on the show and talk with us more.
Love to. This has been
Yay!
Fantastic. It's funny when this started and you guys were talking, all I could do was envision myself sitting in the car going, "This is what I listen to every day." And now it's funny. It's just funny. Like, wow, this is
we do that too. We're like, that's us.
It's neat. It's neat.
Well, I have to say, I'm going to say one thing as a slight plug, but you mentioned Watkins Glen, and Margie and I found out today that we're actually speaking at a conference in Watkins Glen in March. End of March at the NISCATE conference. So not only are we speaking in Philadelphia in February and March, we're going to be in Watkins Glen. So we're taking Toasted on the road.
That's perfect. I know just the guy who could probably give you some pointers as to where to get a couple of these.
I was thinking about that.
Do.
So, yeah,
we got to get Nick out west, and then the three of us can actually do that in person.
Absolutely, that'd be fun.
In Fredonia, or you mean like out west? Because you don't have to twist my arm to go out west.
Oh, now there's an adventure. Now I think we should plan that. That sounds like some long range planning, but we'll pick a date and a time and we'll do something really funky and wild. That would be awesome. And we should do like, my brain's going like crazy, but no, we mean Western New York, like West as in WNY.
Okay.
So
I'll come out.
Yeah.
Yay.
I had to lock. I apologize earlier. I had to get up and lock Lucy up, and she's probably ready for me to let her out. By the way, Lucy's my dog. Just to be clear.
I'm familiar.
Yeah.
Sweet Lucy.
Yeah, she was gnawing on my hand earlier, so I was like, all right, we're going to take a little walk. But hey, Steve, what a wonderful conversation. I can't think of
Thank you.
I appreciate you guys having me on. This has been wonderful, and I look forward to the next time. So, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
Enjoy
having
Tampa.
Next time.
Yeah. Hopefully I get out of Buffalo. We'll see.
Now, how
Yeah.
many
Well,
golf courses are you planning to play down
We're
there?
we're playing 4 rounds, but 3. So one of the day on Christmas Day we're playing 36 holes. So
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
Yep.
Okay.
and in a 24
yeah,
hour period, because it would take me that long.
yeah. We're gonna try. Well, with this whole, and Margie brings up the solstice. Our our time frame's a little shrunk as opposed to the summer solstice where you could probably play 1,000 holes ago. But no, we have
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
3 courses we're playing all over Tampa. So we're really looking for. It should be a lot of fun. We always tend to have a fun time together, the two of us. So
That's
I'm
fantastic. Well,
super.
Merry
hey, same to
Christmas to
you
you and
guys.
Ryan. Happy birthday to
Thanks,
Ryan.
Margie.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
And Nick,
Thank
is a
you. And
pleasure.
hey, guys, raise a glass. Here we
Yep.
go.
Yeah. Here we go.
To
Or a
everybody
can, as it
and to
were.
everyone listening, thank you. Have a great holiday. And here's to you know what? Life, loss, and reimagining it, reinventing. To reinventing. Here we
Cheers.
go. Cheers.
Cheers.